So, Raptor and the Butterfly, attempt 3. So, this was originally planned to be a talk about doing crazy things with Perl 5 and Perl 6. I have a lot of Perl 5, and okay, so far I do kind of like Perl 6, but to be entirely honest, the killer feature for me is grammars, because there is just nothing quite like them in anything else. So I wanted access to grammars from Perl 5. My original plan was to be giving a talk about, and here's some stuff I did with grammars. No, this is mostly going to be a talk about breaking out the yak shears to get as far as that. However, so the keyword of this talk, and indeed also the keyword of setting up for this talk, is lolsob. So, getting Perl 6, all right. You could get it through distro packages. Yeah, but I want all of the bug fixes. There's rakudo.pl, but that's basically built for Perl 6 core hackers who want multiple rakudo installs at the same time. So it kind of turns into a git clone spider baby under the hood. And while it does generally basically work, when it doesn't, debugging it is an exercise in lolsob, or at least it is for me. I think only Tajik ever understood it, and he's doing his best to forget so that the trauma goes away. New plan. I already have CPAN minus. That is how I'm installing basically everything else. I know far too much about Make Maker for my own sanity, and I actually like Make. So the abyss beckons. Let's see if we can alien this shit. If you are curious to be able to see the complete versions of the stuff I'm talking about, that URL will give you a directory listing that has some tarballs in it. So the aim of the game is to get a working alien rakudo. So the standard way of doing a rakudo build, if you're trying to do it simply, is to give it --gen NQP, and it builds NQP and more for you, which is great. But it installs things at configure.pl time. My sysadmins would murder me. You know, the last sysadmin I know of to try and get a Perl 6 install swore quite a lot, restored from a ZFS snapshot, and didn't go back to Perl 6 for weeks. They were so pissed off with it. I am at some point going to submit a patch that changes those options in the documentation to be --install to imply that it actually installs at configure time, because this is totally failing principle of least surprise. And so, lolsob. Okay, so I harassed Perl 6 dev about how to do this, and because of the way things build and install, basically you need to have already installed them. So therefore the answer is you need to have 3 separate distributions, each with their own configure, make, and install phase. That's okay. I can do that. CPAN has dependencies. So, Alien More VM. Now, the obvious question is, why didn't I use Alien Base? And the answers to that are, 1, I actually like Make. 2, I hate module build. And 3, every time I try to use it, it demonstrates that that's mutual. If these don't apply, do take a look at Alien Base. There's been a lot of really cool work went into it. I did actually review some of the stuff and help them out with a couple of design ideas. And they kind of took them, fixed them up to actually work in module build, because module build hates my design ideas too. And it's very cool. So, you know, no criticism, just I'm doing it the old school way. So, Alien More VM, which is basically about Make Maker lets you use a postamble to inject stuff into the make file. And let's go. All right, so you set up a location for alien target, which is basically where you're eventually going to be installed to. Create a dependency for more VM makefile, runs the configure.pl, gives it the target, gives it the bin directory. So far, so simple. Great. Okay, and then once you've got the alien, so your alien inst directory you get by doing a desdir install, so it now installs locally, and then you copy that across into blib. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm doing all of these steps rather than installing it directly, this way generates a correct pack list. which means that you can actually uninstall things later and do all of the various other things that patch lists enable you doing. And also because I'd already by this point decided I was doing it completely properly and was too stubborn to quit. That's why we have a talk about yak shaving instead of a talk about grammars. And then you touch a file in Arch. That makes sure that MakeMaker installs it into the Arch directory rather than the share directory. Again, this doesn't matter a lot in practice for most purposes, but it is the correct thing to do. And then you do make install, and you know that should be fine, right? Except it tries to install half my build directory because MakeMaker has detected all of the various files as being extra PM files. So I go through them, I go, okay, there is definitely a way to fix this. I know I'm just being an idiot, and the solution is you tell MakeMaker pmlibdirs equals lib. That's fine. Everything else in blib, I'm copying in there myself. So, you know, I don't need it to do any of that. And now that works, and you get an install prefix with bin include lib share and a more binary. Cool. Okay, so step 2, alien NQP, which is basically similar. So you do prefix alien target, backends more. Apparently there's a JVM backend to rakudo, but honestly I prefer not to think about that. It can't find more. Why? More is in $path. Why can't it? But it assumes that more is in the prefix that you're going to install NQP into. You will find that the assumption of a single prefix is something of a running theme in this. So, okay, you do with more, which more. Fine. Yes, I know that's a bit of a hack. I don't care. I want it to work. And run make, and make goes kaboom. Because while configure.pl used the more that I gave it in with more, it then wrote a make variable that looks for the bin directory under the prefix that I'm installing it to. Lol sob. Okay, so make can handle this, so we pass the more equals, and then it blows up a different way. It turns out that there's I have no idea what these things actually are, but it's looking for that directory, and of course it's looking for it in where it's going to be installed to, not where more is. Because we have an alien more vm.pm with the install directory underneath, I can find that install directory by this beautiful but rather reliable hack. Now we change my post amble to get a substitution regex run across it. And that then generates a perl -pi-e that hacks the NQP make file to actually look in the right location. And you also have to do the same thing with the finally generated binary for NQP to get it to pass the right lib path to more. But once you've done that, it actually works. Cool. 2 out of 3, we're getting somewhere. I am sure I am prepared for the next stage. No, I'm not. Seriously. Oh my God. Okay, alien rakudo. Rakudo doesn't even have a with more option. You cannot get it to look anywhere except prefix. NQP configure.pm simply does not go, screw it, I'm just going to patch it. So basically, if it doesn't find it with its built-in stupid logic, screw it, hack it, use which, it'll be fine, right? So configure.pl now runs, excellent. So it's time to look at the make file, which inevitably is still looking in prefix, even though it found the right more at configure time. There's all sorts of really nice stuff, but it would be so nice if the configure.pl and the make file were actually on speaking terms. Because of course. So it's time to patch the makefile fragment that gets generated. Add 2 prefixes, because if we have 3 prefix variables for 3 things, I know, that's an amazing and stunning idea. There's a joke here about 15 years of development, and they didn't notice that maybe there were 3 things here rather than 1, but anyway. So configure.pl can actually populate more prefix once you've got it to find it by patching the configure code. NQP prefix, no, there's absolutely nothing in configure, and at this point I just don't care anymore, so I'm going to deal with that as a make variable. So you tweak everything to use them, which involves a lot of diffs like this, going through, figuring out which of the 3 prefixes they meant every time they said prefix, patch the makefile. Fine, not that hard. Make with NQP prefix equals, and kaboom. Okay, so there's this thing called mlibpath, which is it trying to find a bunch of the more VM files, and obviously it's looking in the install prefix instead of the more prefix or the NQP prefix, but because in order for NQP to be able to find the list of opcodes, more actually ships a number of NQP files, so you actually need 2 libpaths for this to work. And of course, naturally, nothing in the makefile actually plans for this, because it's all looking for one place that's neither of the 2 that I actually wanted. So what am I going to do about that? Well, what I'm going to do is say, screw it. People with spaces in their paths can go die in a fire and not have nice things yet. We'll fix that when I backport the patches to actual rakudo. Yeah, at this point, the hackometer is melted. I don't care anymore. I just want it to work. But at this point, rakudo's make test actually passes. Awesome. Right. So, spinning back a little bit, part of the reason for this was at the French Perl workshop a number of years ago. They'd ended up with a funding gap because either a sponsor giving less money or something costing more. I don't know. I stay well away from conference organisation because that would require organisation. So in order to fix this, I auctioned off, for however many euros per hour, I will do stuff with Perl 6. Because obviously me having been the perfectly spherical Perl 6 skeptic for many years, I figured people will find that hilarious. A number of the audience members put a few euros in each, and then of course Liz and Wendy put a bunch more in. Because Wendy thought making me do this would be hilarious. Well, yes, this has been hilarious as in interesting times, as you can see, and I'm not even done yet. However, that fixed the conference problem, and Alien Rakudo is me finally paying back that debt. Because the first time I tried to do it, basically, Parrot happened to me. However, we finally went from nailed to the perch to outback, burned the corpse, salted the grave, which I shed no tears whatsoever over. And quite frankly, compared to Parrot, this has been really easy and fun. So, moving on. Right, so back to the code mines. So, try and run Perl 6. Can't find Perl 6/bootstrap.morv. Your test suite passed, what are you doing? Well, it turns out that inside the bootstrap module loader.nqp in Rakudo, it tries blib/first relative path. So it works, you can call your installed Perl 6 and it works, provided you run it from the build directory. But as soon as you chadir to somewhere else, it breaks because it's now looking in the more prefix. At which point, well, this is the same problem before as backwards, hence lolsob backwards. So time to hack it. Screw this, I'm going to PI-E part of the Rakudo sources in the middle of the build. That line is now in the makefile. Hence the $double to deal with make. This is like my favorite part of this entire process. How do you get a single quote inside single quotes in a shell one-liner? It's easy. You need double quotes on the outside to make it a Perl string. Then the single quote takes you out of the shell single quote. Double quote takes you into a shell double quote. So you have a single quote in the middle of that. Double quote ends the shell quote. Single quote takes you back into the Perl code, and the double quote ends the string in Perl. At which point I can now substitute bits of code in the middle of the Rakudo sources. And now it actually works. It runs. Cool. So at this point, we pull a clone of 9's inline Perl 5 module for Perl 6, Perl6 configure.pl6, and boom. Can't load any of the modules. Unfortunately, my test case was just to see if Perl6 ran. It bootstrapped itself. Because, of course, comp unit repository registry.pm checks an environment variable, and then if it doesn't find the environment variable, it looks in the more prefix. What are you people doing to me? At this point, I'm just too burned out to even cry. So I do the only thing possible, which is to add another PI-E that just jams the frickin' environment variable into the shell scripts that actually launch more VM for rakudo. Also, interestingly, inside repository registry, rakudo prefix doesn't actually mean the prefix of rakudo. You have to stick share perl6 on the end. So it's misleadingly named, undocumented, dangerous, probably shouldn't be there in the first place. Therefore, obviously, it's the exact right thing for me to use, and I'm very happy with it currently. And it works. Okay, I had to rebuild my Perl with du sure plib, but this was documented. Okay, it was documented right at the bottom of the inline Perl sign, under the equals head one, beware of the leopard, but it was documented, I found it, and that worked. So inline perl6, well, obviously that's going to have a single prefix as well, so I just, screw it. Same approach again, much simpler piece of patching, no hidden landmines this time, only the one that I expected to be there, and it was basically easy from there. Okay, so, right, where was I? I was trying to run some perl6 code, wasn't I? And we do this, and it actually works. Cool, I now have a mostly CPAN install of perl6. We then have two slight problems. Okay, firstly, startup is a little slow. Pre-compilation is really helping with that when pre-compilation works, which is most of the time now. But also, inline Perl 5 requires 518. And I wanted to use this for IRC scripting, and I am not recompiling my entire friggin' IRC rig against a different Perl in order to do that. So obviously the solution here is to write a Perl6 server that uses object remote. Object remote being an on-the-fly fat packing system that I use for agentless system scripts. Basically injects itself over the wire over SSH to another machine and lets me run Perl code in parallel there. But it also works totally well on a local machine over a Unix socket. So basically you listen to a socket, while connection accept, object remote node run, and now start that up, and I can use object remote gives me new : on, that allows me to connect to the socket, and now I'm talking JSON over a Unix socket to the 6 server process, and I can actually call Perl6 code in the other process from my master Perl 5 script without having had to have loaded anything. And because it's just JSON on the wire, this works fine from like my system 514 Perl talking to a Perl6 running on a custom 524 that I built for the purpose. Twice, the second time with du sure plib, obviously. And then I thought, hang on a minute. So after all the trouble I went to get this to work at all, I really don't want to have to do this on more than one machine, but that's okay. So what we do is we start the 6 server on a port on localhost, set up SSH forwarding to the other machine, and now on any other machine, I can use object remote to connect over TCP back to the machine with Perl6 on. So at this point, with a small number of CPAN installs plus object remote, I can install Perl6 on one server and use it from any system that can SSH to it. So yeah, inline Perl6 and object remote is actually really good fun, and one of the things I'm planning to do is have a 6serve.pl running locally on my operations box, fire up object remote, use that to connect into a bunch of other systems, pull the text contents of config files, then hand it over a local Unix socket to Perl6, pass the config files with grammars, and then I can diff them in Perl 5 space. And object remote has its own miniature loop, so I can do the fetching part in parallel, and then let Perl6 handle parallelism for the actual parsing, which is going to be good fun. Yeah, okay. I'd need to polish the discs a bit before uploading. I tried uploading a Rakudo style with Parrot years ago, and I confused the heck out of perls, and it indexed some perl 6 files as perl 5 files. Meta CPAN got completely lost. Search.cpan basically went, what are you even doing? So I'm going to need liberal no index before I actually put these onto CPAN. But it works. So the 6dis URL has the tarballs. Once they get cleaned up a bit more, they'll go to CPAN initially as trial releases, and then you'll be able to play with them a bit more directly. But for the moment, those two is all you need to be able to recreate what I just did. And thank you very much for listening. And given I started rather late, but have caught up to only being 10 minutes over time, if somebody has one or two very quick questions, I will quite happily answer them. Alternatively, it may be simpler for you to come and annoy me when I go out for a smoke afterwards, and that way whoever's next in this room will be able to set up sooner. But if there's anything you want to ask now...
It's a lunch break, so everything's fine. You've got time.
Ah, cool. Anybody? Right, okay, either that made complete sense or you're all too terrified of what I just did to ask anything. Yeah, probably both. Cool, thank you very much.